Prompting AI is far easier than most people make it seem. Not because of the specific tools that are the easiest to use or because every business problem can just be solved with that one prompt that somebody is selling you on LinkedIn. It's easier because you don't actually have to get the first prompt perfect at all, right? And this is where a lot of people put unnecessary pressure on themselves. They sit down with AI, they sit down with whatever project they're trying to work with, and they feel like they have to know exactly what to say, exactly what to ask, exactly how to phrase it, have the whole workflow figured out, and exactly what tools they need to connect and all that before they begin. So sometimes they don't begin because that's all too overwhelming, right? But the better way to work with AI is through context that's just developed through conversation. Instead of trying to write the perfect prompt, you just kind of start with what and ask AI to help you figure out what is missing. You can say something like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do overall. Before you answer, ask me what you need to know to help me do this well. That one shift makes AI feel a lot less intimidating because now you're not working on like performing right for the tool, getting this perfect prompt right, having everything figured out. You're working with it the way that it's supposed to use it, right? And that's the conversation step in the Echo framework. Building that context through dialogue and just natural conversation before you expect useful output, right? For a while, a lot of the AI advice sounded like you had to become like this perfect prompt engineer, right? Use this format, add this phrase, say these words in this order, and you have to give as much of the words as you can. And some of that can be useful, but now it can also just make the AI feel way more complicated than it needs to be, and that can actually hurt the workflow. The more useful shift is now towards that context engineering, right? And it may sound overly technical, but the practical idea is very normal. Like it's just helping the AI understand the situation through natural conversation before you're asking it to like produce, recommend, build, decide on like something so specific, right? And that applies whether you're writing an email, making content, mapping out a whole workflow, building an automation, or building a more complicated agent that, has to connect different tools in your business. And conversation isn't just for generated content. Like it's a working posture, like a mindset. You want to treat more AI, like you have to have that mindset of treating AI more like a capable business partner or kind of team member who can help you think through the work, right? And it may be able to do that, but it still needs the right context, right? It needs to understand the goal, the people involved, the constraints, the risks, the systems. And you don't need to know all of that right off the bat and give it right off the bat, but engage in that conversation, right? Um, and that's what actually ends up producing a good outcome. And I've seen this differently, like in my own work, even outside of AI, right? I used to help people tell like their life stories, like writing their memoir and stuff, or helping business owners make content. And oftentimes the problem was that staring at a blank page and trying to type out or like respond to a static prompt was really overwhelming. And they either ended up giving really dry answers that didn't do justice to their story and experience, or they just wouldn't really say much at all and they would stop doing it. And because like the blinking cursor or the blank page is really intimidating, or just getting the right answer out, right? But if you just have a conversation with them, like one time I had a conversation with my father-in-law that just went on for hours. I learned more about him than I had in years. And even when I had asked him to write out stuff, and we were able to record that, and it was so much more fruitful than just him having to write down out based off of these static prompts. There's so much detail that comes out, examples that come out. People remember things that they never could have just typed kind of cold, right? And there's actually a lot of scientific research around this general idea about how conversation activates a different part of our brain and just engages us differently than producing like this one-way monologue. And you don't need to overcomplicate the science to understand the point. Just imagine being asked to give like a formal speech about your area expertise or what you're trying to do versus being just asked to sit down and have a conversation with somebody about it, right? Like let's say over a podcast. For most people, unless you're like a natural writer in that sense, the conversation is easier. And it actually usually goes much deeper because there's that back and forth, there's more context. And this is how I want you to start thinking about AI, right? Like if you hired a capable new employee, you wouldn't just walk up to them and say, build this system or fix this workflow, or even just give them this like perfect like list of instructions, because it's not going to probably be perfect right off the bat, right? And then you like leave the room. You would explain what the business is trying to accomplish. You describe it as best as you can, the exceptions, tools involved, and then they would ask you, like if they were any good, they would ask you questions about that, right? And you would also want them to push back when something doesn't make sense, right? A good team member might say, "Hey, I understand what you want, but here's a risk," or the workflow might create a problem, or the front desk, right? There may be a simpler way to do this. You want AI to help with that too. Like one with risk with AI is that it can become too agreeable, right? People sometimes call this sycophancy when the tool just kind of validates your idea too easily and it's just like, yeah, that's an amazing idea. Yeah, you're right. Like, and it follows your framing too quickly. It's kind of telling you what you want to hear instead of actually helping you do the work better. You shouldn't always assume the tool will be correct in that sense. So like, again, invite that useful pushback directly in a conversational way, right? You can say like, challenge me on this. Don't just agree with my idea. Like there are risks or missing assumptions or better options, trade-offs, like point them out. Don't be like contrarian for no reason, but like help me think through this note clearly. And that one instruction can really change the relationship. It doesn't fix it immediately. You still got to be careful, but AI can start then helping you clarify whatever the kind of task you're working on, test the idea, and prove the direction before you spend time building the wrong thing, right? And this matters a lot because if a lot of the business work kind of carries your voice, your standards, your relationships, processes, reputation, right? The tools you use, a generic answer is maybe fine for some type of like low risk summary, but if you're building something that actually like affects customers, employees, the workflows, sales, operations, decisions, like major decisions, then that generic is not good enough, right? And that conversation was that helps you move from the generic to the specific, because and the pushback, like that kind of conversation helps make that specific idea stronger. And sometimes when like the AI asks a clarifying question, then you realize, okay, you didn't flesh it out as much as you could have, and you may not have decided like who this workflow is really for, right? It also reveals what you need to go kind of do a little bit more deeper dive into offline, away from the AI, right? You may not even realize like the issue is not the tool at all, but like the process itself was never really clearly defined, right? And that's the value of this process, right? That conversation can help you clarify the work before jumping to like some AI output. And again, this is where the next parts of the Echo framework still matter, right? In terms of evaluate, conversation, hone, ownership. You still have to hone the result even after that conversation, right? You still have to ultimately take ownership, right? The AI can, yeah, with everything I've talked about, ask you better questions, challenge all that, but that final judgment still belongs to you. So before your next AI task, don't start by demanding the final answer from trying to get this perfect prompt. Like explain the situation, ask AI what it needs to know, what is the output that you're going for, and then have that conversation. Ask it to challenge you, think it through, ask it what it needs, what tools you need to connect, right? Again, like that conversation, if you take anything away, have a conversation with the AI and let that build the context, let that build the actual prompt that's needed. And so that like it's not just again with like generating content, but even building workflows. AI gets much easier when you stop trying to like make that first prompt part perfect and you actually just start treating the work like a conversation.